We start this Wednesday with Tales from the Couch, where I sit on my couch and watch as many NBA games as I can, taking copious notes, which people seem to make fun of a lot too. So, all right, the Sixers win this one at home against the Nets, 115-106. Doc Rivers rule. In effect, Doc Rivers years ago once told me, I'd rather all the good players play because your team will be up for it, and when they don't. And I thought it was crazy, and ever since I always think about it, and I swear to God he's right about this. All right, so the Nets were 8.5-point favorites on FanDuel coming in with pretty much the full squad. Kyrie, Simmons, KD, all playing in this one. For the Sixers, they were starting Anthony Melton, Shake Milton, Tobias Harris, PJ Tucker. Montrezl Harrell only played 16 minutes. This was a big B-ball Paul Reed game. He played 31 minutes. Nice player, a lot of fun, a lot of energy. Pretty good if he doesn't try to dribble or create off the dribble. The rest of the minutes here for the Sixers, because I was looking at this as well, Niang in their house, Korkmaz, who hit a couple nice shots. The 10th guy as far as minutes actually playing was Thibault. He played 3 minutes. He can't even get in the games now when Maxey is out, Harden is out, and Embiid is out, apparently for only a couple games. So Thibault's played 8 minutes or less in 4 of the last 6. Just something to take a look at. They talked a little bit about the Nets' lack of size in the postgame. Yes, it is an issue. But it shouldn't be an issue in this game. Okay? It shouldn't. Because there was a lineup out there where it was, I think it was like the third quarter, and the Nets had this Kyrie, Claxton, Joe Harris, who's looking a little bit better. It was kind of rough to watch there in the beginning of the season. Seth Curry, who's just so good, man. God, I love that guy's game because he's just so much more than a shooter. And then on the other side, they went Millsap. That is a really small group. As it was pointed out on the broadcast, because it's shocking. It was like Kyrie's the biggest guard. He's bigger than Mills. He's bigger than Curry, I guess. And then Harris is your power forward in that lineup, and there's Claxton. So Kyrie and Claxton are running a pick and roll, and Philly's blitzing the hell out of it. And Claxton is actually a very competent guy with the ball in his hands. Going back to those Georgia days that I like to reference every now and then because what kind of player he was. He was a guy that would try more things offensively, and you hope that that's still in him in his development as opposed to some of these guys that are more multi-skilled, but they have really one role, and then they never really develop it, and then they never get comfortable enough to actually apply it in games. Plenty of guys can do tons of awesome shit in practice, and then you kind of regress to what you're comfortable with as a basketball player. And Claxton has shown that he maybe is headed in the right direction with some of that stuff. Anyway, the point is that him being your outlet where Kyrie can just throw it over the top of the blitz and Claxton can catch it. Like Claxton's good in a couple dribble and a pass move, right? I'm telling you, he's bringing the ball up the court. And so then you've got shooting where Mills is off to the weak side, I guess you would say. And then Curry and Harris are stationed on the other side. And you're like, man, this could actually work. And the other thing about blitzing the point guard off the high pick and roll, which is, high pick and roll is literally to say it's half of the plays you see in the NBA would be low. But there's some variation of stuff off of it. But, the other night I was watching Cleveland and Atlanta, and, after a couple, you should know what your team's plan is against the blitz when they keep the two with the ball handler off the screen. And it can be tough if you're a smaller guard and there's all this size coming at you and you're like, what the hell do I do with the ball? But I don't know, the second or third time, you should have a plan. And for Cleveland, it was awesome because Garland knew. Garland is so smart. By the way, here's an aside. Whose backcourt would you rather have, Cleveland's or Atlanta's? Discuss. So Garland knew exactly, like I said, this isn't some super complicated thing to go, I have no idea what they're doing. Even Boston, when they stunk in the first half of last year, you're like, hey, I think they're going to try to double Tatum off the screen. You guys might want to be ready for this. And it felt like it took Boston a month to figure it out. But Garland was great. And when your outlet's Mitchell, and now he's attacking 4-on-3, good luck. And in this case, I'm like, look at all this spacing. And then it's not like Philly has a ton of size with this group. And it was just something that I was looking at was like, this is not something that should be a problem. So just an observation on that stuff. KD in the 2-3 zone crushed it in the first half. He was fucking awesome. Philly comes down to 2-3. Durant just gets right to the middle. You can lob it to him. He's catching at the elbow, and he's hitting all sorts of jumpers. He had 14 points in the first half, only 6 in the second half. It was a bad KD game by the standard that we have for KD. You're like, where is this guy? Kyrie had 23. It felt a little, Kyrie is going to have these burst moments of Kyrie, which are spectacular. But, the Nets are still trying to figure out who they are on offense because, of the inconsistency of who you've had. And there's always going to be a lot of ISO because you have Kyrie and Durant. That's fine. Really what I'm doing here is I'm burying the lead because Ben Simmons back in Philly. I knew this was going to happen last night. And I almost said something, but I was like, you know what? I'm going to hold off because I know at times I can feel like I'm a little negative with it. But I knew that Ben Simmons against a group of Sixers, who I call the Blue Coats, was going to really start getting chesty. And he's been playing better. It started in Portland. He was terrific against Memphis. So this is a really good sign for the Ben Simmons stockholders out there still that have just looked at the red number going, well, I can't sell now. He's had a week here where you're going, all right. And he was aggressive in the first half. His passing was terrific. There was even a couple times where I was like, man, he's been passing out of this one a bunch of times. Because that's the thing with him. There'll still be moments where you're like, dude, you had a wide open layup. Like, what are you doing? And we know that's happened before. There's a couple times where I thought he would kick it out and he was aggressive. He shushed the crowd after a couple free throws. And I was like, all right. He got into it with Niang. Not really quite sure what happened there. I know what happened, but the Niang elbow didn't really seem that bad. I don't know if Simmons was trying to sell it a little bit at work. And then he also flexed towards the Sixers bench. So I'll admit, after the JJ Redick podcast that he did, as I've referenced this, I think 2 other times, I listened to that podcast and was like concerned. I went, wait, that's what you think of yourself? Like, because the whole podcast was like, man, I'm awesome. I can't believe people give me a hard time. Like that would be the log line of his guest appearance. And I was like, man, there's like no accountability about anything. And so I did end up mentioning last night that it was like there's nothing more predictable than him feeling himself. Now, I'll add this. On the larger scale of what's important, I'm actually wrong. I don't like it. I knew it would happen. He took one shot in the second half. They'd lose this game. Whatever, they lost the basketball game. All right. Lost a game, not supposed to lose this game. But the fact that there's anything that remotely resembles confidence from Simmons is a positive. So I'm telling myself, even though I knew it was going to happen and I didn't like it, and I was like, oh, here we go. Who gives a shit, right? That it looks like something. And he's been playing better this last week. And it looks like, he's starting to look like a basketball player again instead of completely lost. I mean, this guy's still so young, whatever you think about him. It's always weird to me, like, he's just not going to be good anymore. I never want to take that side of the bet. So as silly as it may have felt last night, I think it's actually a positive, even though they lost this game, even though he only took one shot in the second half. Just the fact that even if it's fake, who gives a shit? It was more than what we've seen before, where a guy looked completely defeated as a player. Sacramento and Memphis. The West top 9 right now, 1 through 9 in the standings, are separated by 1.5 games. Golden State, the most talented, worst defensive team I've seen in a long time. They're 3.5 games out of the 1 seed. Oklahoma City is 4 games out of the 1 seed in the West. No, this will not hold up. The parity stuff is crazy. I have a theory on parity a little bit later. Sacramento has won 7 in a row. They're the 3 seed. They're 10-6. They started 0-4, so they're 10-2. I don't want to play this game of like, hey, a call here or there. They could have won 10 straight. That's a little aggressive. They're the number 2 offense in the NBA. They don't play a ton of defense. It's the best De'Aaron Fox has ever played. It's a massive leap. His shooting numbers are 55 and 41% from the floor. He was under 30% from 3 last year. Sabonis is taking less shots, but he seems totally comfortable in what they're doing with the offense. This is 5 straight years for Sabonis between 11 and 12 boards per game. He assists are at 6. He gets to the free throw line. He seems to be accepting less touches because of more talent around him. Kevin, please hammer, don't hurt them. Career high in points. He's 50% from 3 right now on 7.5 attempts per game. And he's so much more than a shooter. He's running through screens like Reggie Miller last night. Ja's trying to chase her. Like Ja's feeling like he's getting a lesser assignment, not having to deal with De'Aaron Fox, who's like all NBA level De'Aaron Fox right now. And then it's like, oh shit, I got to chase this guy through screens for 40 minutes. This sucks coming off an injury. Herter can handle up until the end. Don't worry, we'll get to the last couple minutes of this game. So, and then you've got Sacramento, who could throw Davion Mitchell at Ja for a little bit. Not that anybody's really ever going to slow down Ja Morant, because he's got maybe the most absurd finishing package for a perimeter player right now in the NBA. And then you've got Barnes, who you can toss it to, who's going to shoot the ball usually well. He's under 30% this season, but he was 38% last year. And Malik Monk is more than just a shooter. Keegan's November's not nearly as good as October. I'm not going to worry about that right now. My point is that they've got multiple creators. They all seem to already know their role within this offense. They play to the end of the shot clock, which is one of my biggest pet peeves about teams, where it's like, oh, now I don't have the ball, so now I'm just going to stand here. Like, there's guys doing later cuts. Like, they had a couple nice plays where, whether it was somebody on a drive and then somebody repositioning them and stuff. This shit is not hard, but teams just don't. They get bored. They get lazy. They don't have the ball. I mean, that's why I don't like those high usage guys, because when you stand around for fucking an entire season, you get sick of cutting and never getting the ball back. And Sacramento plays like a team that's been together much longer than just a couple months. I also have this other theory I was talking about with parity. There was something in college football. Well, it's not like you haven't heard of the spread offense, but there was this dynamic that happened with the spread offense where basically lesser talented teams were running the spread to try to compete with more talented teams. So you think about Mike Leach and Texas Tech, some of the stuff Rich Rodriguez was doing early on before everybody hated him at Michigan. But like, not everybody was running the spread. It was a great equalizer. If you weren't getting the big time recruits, let's run more plays. Let's spread them out. Let's get these defensive linemen and linebackers chasing us to the sidelines for 80 plays. We'll wear them down. We're going to find more space. The quarterback, we're going to make it super easy for him because we're not getting the 5-star guy all the time. We're going to put up big numbers. We're probably not going to defend all that well, and maybe we get to a nice bowl game. And that's kind of what college football was there for a little while. And then Saban had this awesome presser one time where he was like, "This what y'all want?" He might have not said y'all. I'm throwing it in there. And it was like, "This is really what you want?" College football, okay, fine. And so then all the guys that were getting the real recruits, the best recruits, were like, "We'll run this shit too." And that could have been why we've had this lack of parity at the top of college football. We're actually testing that now this season. It looks like we might get a couple different teams in there for a change, because it's like, all right, we'll just run that stuff. And now you don't have this schematic advantage against us. You're not going to beat us randomly every now and then. And that could have been the reason there was a lack of parity in college football. So when I look at basketball at the NBA level, because I'll admit too, I watched like 4 or 5 NBA. Well, there was only like 5 last night, 4 or 5. And then I threw on St. John's, Syracuse. That was an adjustment. Watching NBA games and being like, oh, let me check in on my Johnnies here for a second. So when I look at the NBA right now and the parity that we have, I wonder if the 5-out stuff, 5 perimeter guys, I wonder if this is, and this is just a working theory here, I wonder if that's a bit of an equalizer for lesser talented teams. Like, if we can space the floor, if it's kind of the Utah thing, where when you watch them, you're like, every one of these guys is a little is someone you actually have to guard. And that's what has happened in the league. So it's not just the middling teams or the lesser teams. The better teams have tried to do it too, is, that OKC era where Durant and Westbrook were incredible and they're winning all these games, but they have Perkins and Robertson playing on the floor at the same time. That wouldn't happen in today's NBA game. That's 2 guys you absolutely don't have to guard on offense. You couldn't do that in today's game. And it's not like Sacramento's always 5 out or something like that. Not with Metu coming in, who I sneaky always kind of like. And Sabonis is comfortable in a bunch of different positions on the floor. Look, he's gonna post, he's gonna work from the elbow, but he's also not afraid to be further out and stretch the defense a little bit. It's just something I'm thinking about with some of these other teams where I was looking at Utah. Sacramento feels better than Utah long term, at least for me in this season. We'll see what happens unless Markkanen continues to be an all NBA type guy, which is a whole different story in all this. So look, something to pay attention to, something I'll revisit at some point. Sacramento wins this game barely because the last 3 minutes looked like a high school team that had never seen a press before. They had 8 or 9 turnovers in the fourth quarter. 3-pointers were part of the story in this as well. I think Memphis had a 2 for 17 stretch over this. No Bane as well. Ja, who is it possible to have a quiet 20 points in the fourth quarter. I think he ended up with 20 in the fourth. He had a chance to tie from the three-point line. He got fouled very, very late, missed the first one, so now they're screwed. Knows he has to miss the last one, makes the second one. He tries to miss the third. He gets called for the lane violation, which is stepping over the free throw line before the ball hits the rim. I'll never for the life of me understand why Shaq wasn't called for this. He did it every single time. He stepped over the free throw line before the ball hit the rim. I think the refs just felt so bad for him, they never called it. Let's take a look at Fox in the clutch. He's 65% from the floor, clutch moments, 57% for three. He's fourth in scoring amongst the guys that play, because there's some points per game stuff where guys just haven't qualified. Last season, he was 2 less points in clutch time. He was 42% overall from the floor, 8% from three. So he's been a much different player early part of this season. Look at some of the Fox numbers. They'll probably, if you haven't been paying too close attention, it'll really surprise you. All right, let's keep it moving here. Detroit gets a win at Denver, their first road win in 11 games on the road. No Cade, shin issue, little worried. They're 24th in offense, 29th in defense. Not great, Bob. Denver's 8th on offense, 24th in defense. Bad week, weird week. Jokic misses the 3 games, starting with the Knicks game last week. They won at Dallas. I do have a small aside on Luka. I could make this an open. I think things are going to start getting weird for criticism for Luka. You're starting to see a little bit of it. I've talked about usage rate, that heliocentric stuff that I don't really necessarily love. And he's at like 38% usage, which ties a career high for a season. I believe his second season, he was around 38% as well for that one. I'm just telling you, like when you could say Luka 50-year in, it's still very early, and it is. The Western Conference Finals probably feels a bit more like a fluke appearance than a reality of like them being one of the 2-3 teams in the West, because that's certainly not how you feel right now about Dallas. Portland has been in that group. I put Atlanta and Trae Young in there. I think a couple of those early Boston Eastern Conference Finals with Brad Stevens were a little fluky and certainly ahead of schedule for them. Just saying, pay attention to that one. All right, so back to this one. Denver did some really interesting stuff with Jokic in the screen stuff because they used Jalen Duren basically one-on-one with Jokic a lot. They didn't want to double, and it's always this thing. It sucks with Jokic when you're the opponent. Like, what do I do? Do I double Jokic? Because if I do, he's going to burn me in a pass. It's going to be some sort of cutter. I mean, we've seen it now for years. They tried to put the youngest guy in the NBA against Jokic one-on-one. They were running some cool screen stuff where they would switch. They would get Murray's guy. There was Joseph ended up on Jokic in the post and the switch. And it was weird because then Duren had Murray in the switch, and then Murray went to the opposite corner, and then Duren just didn't want to follow Murray, but then he didn't help Joseph, and he ended up guarding no one, which I'm sure they'll go through this and be like, you got to make a decision. And in that case, it's come double Jokic at that point because Murray was so stuck into the corner. Another thing with Murray, it's going to take some time. I would think Denver fans would agree. It hasn't looked great. Shout out to the Cherry Cricket when I was there in Denver last week. I didn't go to the Nuggets game, but I watched the game at the Cricket. Great little spot. And I'm watching Murray. He had 2 possessions very late in that game against the Knicks. He couldn't get by the defender. He just couldn't. None of us would say that Murray's in that elite, quick, twitchy tier of guards. But it was a little frustrating. I'm sure he was frustrated. He's just not there yet. Just a weird loss for Denver, which again was a weird week, missing some of their guys. Detroit closed with Joseph, Burks, Bogdanovich, who's been terrific for them, Duren, and Kevin Knox getting a little love. And then they actually switched the Knox-Murray thing to try to get Knox in the switch against Joker. But, look, that wasn't really going to work all that well either. But Bogdanovich hit some shots. Burke had a big one. All right, last one. LA at Phoenix. Phoenix wins. There's not really that much here, but there's other things to talk about. The Phoenix bench feels much better. I keep saying it. Chris Paul's missed 7 games with the heel, but at least they have Devin Booker, who's on another level right now, arguably his best season. Phoenix is number 3 in offense, number 6 on defense. Anthony Davis, though, maybe more of the story, the Pat Bev part of this, because we just expect Phoenix to win this kind of basketball game. Anthony Davis in his last 4 games, 37-18, 38-16, 30-18, 37-21, 5 blocks, 5 assists last night. Apparently, the Lakers reported one of the, I don't know, I hope this is right, but AD is the first player to ever have 35 plus, 20 plus rebounds, 5 plus blocks, 5 plus steals, 5 or more in a game. That's pretty good when no one's ever done it before. I love that this is happening for Anthony Davis. I get he's not a great long-term bet. I get that he's not the alpha that all of us wish that he was going to be. I don't know if this is because LeBron's not there. I think part of it's that they haven't played great teams. If you run through this, Wins against Brooklyn, Detroit, San Antonio. I was at the Detroit game. I thought he looked great in person. They lose to Phoenix. They're supposed to lose at Phoenix with this group. I'm just happy that he is now reminding us that when he is healthy and right, he is no worse than a top 10 player in the NBA. And he's still too young to just be completely written off. No LeBron. There's some weird numbers there. Now I think 3-3 without LeBron. I'll double check this. 3-3 without him, 2-8 with him. The points per game was a massive jump. And it might have been the opponents. The point differential's bad. I mean, all the stats are actually bad for an argument, but I'm not ready to go there that this team is better without LeBron. Westbrook has been awesome in November. The traditional stats are good, but he's shooting 39% from three. However, last night, when he's really feeling it, felt like, now I'm really feeling myself. He took 20 shots last night. He had a couple drives where, it's great when it works, but sometimes it's completely forced. He had an air ball 3 with 11 seconds left on the shot clock. He lost a baseline cutter for no reason other than he just stopped paying attention to the guy behind him on a secondary break. And there was another possession late where at 150 and 105, it didn't matter. The game was kind of over. He just didn't have anyone to defend. He was just sort of standing there. So I'm just warning you, it's better. He should have always been a sixth man. Darvin Ham luckily had a bad Westbrook year prior to this to be able to pull this off. Vogel couldn't do it immediately, which he would have done had the team actually been more competitive because it would have been the right basketball decision. It makes sense for Russ. Go out there, have more backup minutes. You can do whatever the hell you want. But in a spot where the game was still in the balance because the Lakers cut it really close there and then Phoenix just ran away with it at the very end, there was a little bit of that, I'm just going to do this all on my own stuff. And that's the difference between AD's got it rolling. And it reminds me even going to the Detroit game. Detroit had a bunch of nice possessions in a row, and then Marvin Bagley got the ball and decided to try to take Anthony Davis off the dribble from 33 feet out. Guess how that went? Not well. And so you're watching it going, things were clicking a little bit, and that's another part about being a basketball player, being all right, what's some awareness here? And with Westbrook, there's a good version of this story, but I'll say that the close of this game, there are these moments where I'm these little in-between things that the guys who just bang you over the head with the averages never seem to want to point out. All right, last thing here, because I have rambled. Let's talk to Pat Bev push on DeAndre Ayton. Okay, this starts with Reeves on the ground, and I'll offer this. Austin Reeves can't get a fucking call in a game to save his life. Don't know what that's about. He gets truck sticked on drives, just yard sale. And then it's stand by me, where it's do you want to see a dead body? And then he's just on the ground and dudes look at him. It happens all the time, man. So late in this one, Reeves tries to drive on Booker. I thought Booker was actually clean on the ball at the top, and then the follow through hits him in the face. And Reeves, because it sucks to get hit in the face, Reeves is on the ground. He's pissed. He's not getting any calls. And then Booker kind of looks down at him. And look, it was disrespectful. And then Ayton's looking down on him. And Anthony Davis is standing right next to Ayton. And I don't know if Ayton said something to Reeves. It looked like he was trying to stand over him a little bit. I wouldn't say that necessarily hits Ayton's profile. I saw everybody's presser last night, so I don't know if there's a little bit of a piece missing there. But he's still standing over him. Right. And it has more to do with Reeves getting hit in the face than not getting any calls. And with Pat Bev, there's always some stuff in the middle. I don't always like Pat Bev. I think some of the stuff he says is fucking crazy. It's look at me stuff. He's doing it for the attention. And then when he went after my guy, Chris Paul, multiple times. Chris Paul cooked him in the playoffs. And then Pat Bev goes on TV and says he sucks. All right. We know the game. That's the game. You get a media deal out of it. I liked this one last night because you knew Anthony Davis wasn't going to do anything. And he shoves Ayton. The funniest part of this whole thing is Bridges flies past Beverly after Beverly hit his teammate. And then Bridges goes over to hold his teammate. I was dude, the guy you wanted was right there and you didn't do shit. This one made sense to me. I didn't have a problem with this one from Pat Bev. I'd love to know if Ayton said something. Because like I said, it didn't look great. And it was a buildup of other things, and the game's kind of done. Beverly gets tossed. There's a ton of stuff Beverly does that I don't like. I think he's a dirty player. I think he's annoying as shit. I think his quotes are also annoying. I liked this one last night. So approved.